You're now listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.
Hello, Colorado. This is the Engage the Rockies podcast. I am your host, Jarvis Caldwell. So over the last few weeks, we've been discussing different ballot measures that are going to be on your ballot this November. And last week we had some law enforcement issues. We had on District Attorney Michael Allen to discuss why he opposes or is in favor of those ballot measures. And today we're talking about one that I think is maybe the most important ballot issue that we're going to be voting on come this November, and that's Proposition 127. Proposition 127, if you're unfamiliar, is a measure that would ban the intentional killing, wounding, pursuing, or entrapping of mountain lions, bobcats, and lynx. Now that's a summarized version of it. The language is a lot longer, and I recommend everybody go and read the entire language. But to talk about this, we wanted to bring on an expert who lives and breathes this stuff and who's been talking about it a lot and kind of been involved in the process throughout. So today's special guest, and we're very fortunate to have him here, is Mr. Dan Gates. And Dan is the chair of the Issues Committee, Colorado Wildlife Deserve Better. Dan, thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Jarvis, thanks a bunch, and hopefully our internet digital technology will get us through this all right.
I hope it holds out. I appreciate it. This is, for our listeners, this is our second try, and Dan was nice enough to give it another try here, and so it looks like it's working now. Okay, Dan, we're just gonna jump right into it here. So, kind of proponents of this initiative who got it on the ballot and who are pushing for it, they use this term banning trophy hunting, and I think that language is. They use that language because people associate it with just kind of killing for fun or something like that, right? They're calling it a trophy and it's only to hang it on the wall. But, do you feel like that's kind of a mischaracterization of what they're actually trying to do?
Well, yeah, for sure. And I mean, the title itself specifically mentions the banning of hunting. It's prohibiting hunting. And while they attempted to try to get trophy hunting in the language through the title board, the Supreme Court, and Secretary of State, we were successful in getting trophy hunting out of it, but it still remains in the measure, the language, and defining trophy hunting, which, as you mentioned, is intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping a mountain lion or bobcat. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, because the definition of hunting is intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping. And so the nuance that they've created is this false premise that trophy hunting is all that's going on, and that's what they're trying to stop, even though the title says hunting. All of their advertisements that are out there mention trophy hunting and trophy hunters, but the whole scope of what they're trying to accomplish is a hunting ban, and the language that is utilized to define trophy hunting in the measure could be subjective or objective, depending on who looks at it from a court of law or from the legislature when they want to move to something else. And you could turn around and legal opinions, legal advice has said you can take mountain lions and bobcats out and put elk or bighorn sheep in there, or mallard ducks or whatever, just by the way it's written. So it's a camel nose under the tent. It's a preemptive strike on their side and what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point. So your organization and other organizations who are opposing this measure, they use a term that I don't think I'd ever heard before, but I think it's a great term. And it's ballot box biology. And I think what comes to mind, what we think of is what the recent wolves reintroduction, right? Ballot box biology, like putting the health and the future of the ecosystem, putting it up to voters who many have no idea about the actual biology and ecosystem of Colorado. So can you kind of give our audience, not all of our audience are hunters or even outdoorsmen necessarily, especially down here in El Paso County. Can you kind of give the audience an idea of like how much work goes into maintaining a healthy balance within Colorado's ecosystem when it comes to hunting and controlling populations and things like that?
Well, I mean, the argument that we give, and I just did an interview with the Denver Post editorial board yesterday with our team, and we start the conversation by saying, don't listen to us and don't listen to the proponents of 127. Listen to the experts, the science-based wildlife managers that have been managing wildlife wildlife in Colorado for the last 125 years, and mountain lions specifically for the last 55 since they became a big game species. And we have 78 big game species in the state, 961 species of total wildlife. And Colorado Parks and Wildlife manages and researches and stewards every single one of those species. But the 78 game species provide the funding mechanism to be able to fund programs and data and research and employees of all those 961 species. And so if you take two species out, like bobcats and mountain lions, for example, then you have to be considerate of the fact that the experts that are managing our wildlife resources don't have the ability to manage other wildlife resources that depend on or that are prey to bobcats and mountain lions. And so as soon as you start letting the general public nitpick what they want or what they don't want, it starts to degrade and erode the science, but the North American model of wildlife conservation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This just came to mind, but I was thinking of, do you recall that there was this uproar? I mean, it might have been 10 years ago at this point, the way time flies, but the whole Cecil the lion issue out in Africa where the dentist, killed a lion. And what really came out, and I think a lot of people learned from that whole thing, because what it was is that the hunting that was going on, like there was a lot of money spent by that hunter, and that was to help balance that population there, like with that older lion, and that money goes to do the funding and the research and pay for the experts that help maintain the wildlife in that population. And so I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of the point you're making, is that it's very important. The lion hunting side of it is very important for helping fund these things and balancing our ecosystem, if I kind of summarize that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, and it gets to the point to where, and not to degrade or erode somebody's specific professions, Jarvis, but I don't want the guy who drives Ubers at downtown Denver making my wildlife decisions, nor do I want the florist in Colorado Springs making my brain surgery decisions. I want people that have science-backed education and practices and experience to be able to do that. People have opinions about a variety of things. You look at our ballot measures this year in Colorado, there's 14 state ballot measures, which are 7 constitutional and 7 statutory measures that people are going to get a chance to vote on. There's a lot of things that are social issues that people should be able to have a say on. School choice, for instance, maybe taxes, maybe roads and bridges. You could put abortion on there depending on how you look at that particular subject. But when it comes to science, that nobody knows anything about specifics of it. I mean, do we want people in the state of Colorado or any other state that has ballot initiatives to vote on how we should do space exploration or how we should do Department of Defense protections for our citizens? No. We need to leave those types of things to the experts. And the experts sometimes come in the form of government, but they damn sure come in the form of state government agencies that are charged with managing and stewarding our natural resources and wildlife, like what we do in Colorado.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Okay, sir. So if this passes, do you think, what kind of precedent do you think this sets? Is this like the foot in the door? I think you had mentioned the camel nose under the tent. Does this take off down the road and embolden those who, next election cycle, it's not just going to be about, big cats. It's going to be whatever, bears or elk or deer. Do you see this kind of snowballing?
They've already said and laid their cards on the table, Jarvis. They've mentioned the fact about, the people that are helping to fund our side of it, the trophy hunters from around the world that are coming out in full force to oppose this. And when they get a chance to call names and we don't get a chance to rebut it, they're the only ones who get, the word in the press or the word in the media or whatever. This last email that cats aren't trophies, the proponents of 127 sent out, called out bighorn sheep hunters and that we need to stop them too. They've called out the elk hunters and we need to stop them too. If you listen to Wayne Pacelli, who is with the Animal Welfare Action, who is funding the majority of this program, this proposition, Wayne Pacelli, in the early stages of his career, and he's never backed off of this, when he started doing stuff in California. And for those people that don't know, Wayne Pacelli was the former HSUS, Humane Society of the United States CEO. He's not there any longer because he had some improprieties that he had to deal with. They kicked his ass out, gave him a severance package, so he went somewhere else and started this other component, the Animal Welfare Action. But he said in his past, in California, our intent is to stop all hunting. Our intent is to stop it in California, species by species, and when we accomplish that, we will go state by state, and we will go species by species. Now, he's not been as successful as what he would have liked, but this is a prelude of what is yet to come. And this particular landscape in Colorado, with the gubernatorial administration, with the governor and the first gentleman, both being animal rights extremists, this is a priming of the pump for them to attempt to accomplish what they want, which is the ultimate goal in some way, shape, or form, to ban hunting. Not trophy hunting, not just mountain lions and bobcats. It's all hunting. And I want to make sure that people here understand that in 2019, we thwarted the efforts of these organizations to take away the harvest of bobcats, the management of bobcats in the state of Colorado. We thwarted it at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission with this governor's appointments to the commission. 11-0. The next year we did it 11-0. When they came back again, we forced them to call their cards and they withdrew their petition. They didn't like those answers, so they went to the General Assembly, to the Colorado Legislature on February 3rd of 2022 with Senate Bill 31 to ban the harvest of mountain lions and bobcats. We defeated that measure. They've gone through the procedures and the protocols that are necessary to try to accomplish what you want, and those were not successful. This is their last-ditch effort. Right. They've called in the big juggernaut guns from the East Coast that run animal rights extremist campaigns throughout the country. These are not citizens of the state of Colorado making these decisions. There might be some favorable positions from people in Colorado, but they didn't initiate it. They don't have the money to be able to do so, and the money to do that has been coming from out of state with out-of-state extremists to turn around and undermine our management within our wildlife resources within Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Man, that's a great point. And I'm glad you mentioned California, because if I've read correctly when I was kind of going through this, is California is the only other state that's actually done this so far. And, I worked at the legislature for a couple of years, and we had a saying that just watch what happens in California and give it 2 years and it's going to happen here. And I think this is maybe one of the perfect examples. So happens in California, Colorado, for whatever crazy reason, starts adopting what California does. And then, it moves on to the next state. But, I think that's a really good place to wrap it up here, Dan. I really appreciate it.
We would hope that we would
go ahead, Dan. Sorry, there was a little bit of a delay there.
We would hope that the people in Colorado, when they go to make their vote through the ballot over the course of the next 26 days, that they might make the right decision. Don't necessarily listen to us at Wildlife Deserve Better or the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. Don't turn around and listen to the opposition. Listen to the facts and the data and the statistics of the experts that have managed our wildlife appropriately. And I want to end on one note. In 1965, mountain lions were a nuisance and a pest in the state of Colorado. Sportsmen and women, and the Fish and Game Agency at that time came together and made mountain lions a big game species so they could be appropriately managed and regulated. Since 1965, we have between 4,400 and 5,000 mountain lions on the landscape with 55 years of regulated oversight and harvest. 55 years of regulated hunting, and we have 20 times, 30 times as many mountain lions now as what we did when they were deemed a nuisance and nobody cared about them. Sportsmen and women have carried the flag and turned around and propped up wildlife management and supported the agency that does so. And the undermining of the extremist groups, all they want to do is stop it. It's because they don't like it. And if you think it's about mountain lions and bobcats, it's not. Read the language and the measure.
Well, that's a great endpoint there, Dan. I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more, correct me if I'm wrong, they can go to wildlifedeservebetter.com. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. Well, again, I really appreciate it. I know you're a very busy man. As my disclaimer that I always have to do, Engage the Rockies, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit, so we don't take positions on anything. But what we do is we bring on experts to discuss their positions on it. So, again, sir, we really appreciate it, and good luck with your fight here.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but that's out of yours and I's capabilities.
Hey, that's all right, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you for listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.